We are back, and we have brought Kev on because it has been a crazy week. We've been trying to get Kevin on earlier, but of course, when the news broke about McDaniel getting fired, you were driving. Then more news broke. Everything's breaking during like the workday, so we decided we're just going to take a Saturday, just a midday, nothing really going on right now. Just kind of recap everything, collect our thoughts, give another rundown to Dolphin fans, and then talk about what's going forward. So Kev, yeah, why don't you give your opinions, because we really haven't had a chance to talk to you either here on Discord. How has this week been for you?
I want to say two things. I want to say, first of all, Kevin, I am very, very proud of you for getting to your destination safely after hearing the news while you were driving that Mike McDaniel has been fired.
I had to pull over a little bit. I can't lie. I had to pull over and be like, holy shit, it happened. And then I was like, okay, well, now I actually have to get to where I'm going.
And the other thing is, Brett, there's a lot happening right now. The Dolphins are conducting an interview.
Yes, they are. For those who don't know, it has broke that the Dolphins are interviewing Clint Kubiak today. We do have to, anybody who has a bye, we do have to get those interviews in today. Something that's probably going to give Dolphin fans a heart attack. I do expect news to come out that Vance Joseph is going to get an interview today as well. Part of that is also the Rooney Rule, because again, just to recap, you need to have two external candidates to satisfy the Rooney Rule. And whether Dolphin fans think he is a good coach or not, he is one of the hot names this coaching cycle.
Well, the other one is also Brian Flores, and Miami's not interviewing him. We can just get this out of the way now.
No.
So, like, the other guy that would like satisfy that and maybe give you a qualified candidate is just not a name for this job. So you have to do other names who could make sense, and I think Joseph's like one of the only ones.
I told Brett the other night privately when the two of us were just talking, I said, I'm going to love the 8 hours of Twitter in between the report that Vance Joseph gets an interview and it being learned that Vance Joseph's not going to be the coach, because I think that you're going to see some unintelligent panic.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Stephen Ross does him a favor, because I think it helps him if his name's out there. Helps him if his name is out there, and as a candidate for a head coaching job.
100%.
I don't think Stephen Ross is afraid to do him a favor, because I know that there's a past relationship. I think it came out that they at least like each other, right? They're not like completely hating each other every minute of the day. So like, if you're gonna have to satisfy this rule regardless, and there aren't candidates who you already want to interview who fit the Rooney Rule, like the unfortunate reality of the rule is you have to get creative in how you do it. There's like no other way around it. So at this point, I'd rather just give guys favors. But just in general, right? Like in terms of this head coaching job and now where we're at with the Miami Dolphins, it's kind of two things for me. I think Mike McDaniel could have worked. There is still a situation in me where I think it could have worked. But as you take a step back and you look at this from 1,000 feet view, it's hard to imagine that it was going to work immediately. And the truth is, if the Dolphins are going to go into this next chapter where they have a new head coach or a new general manager, a new outlook, a new identity, a new quarterback, the only thing that's remaining is the head coach. And if that's the case, I think the only way this works going forward is that the general manager, in this case, John Eric Sullivan, gets to choose his next head coach. And he gets to choose the guy who builds his identity and his sort of blueprint on the field. Because I feel like the worst thing that happens is you go, okay, Sullivan, you have to go deal with Mike McDaniel, whether you want to or not. And now suddenly this is no longer a job you want, because it's not a job where you get to put your hands on the most important hire arguably of your entire tenure. Like, this is going to be the most important hire that John Eric Sullivan has to make. And it would suck if it was like Mike McDaniel has to be your head coach next year, because it's like, man, if you guys don't agree on any one thing, it just leads to more progress and stress heading into what might be a pivotal offseason.
Yep. Now, Kev, just to get your talk, J.E. Sullivan, we'll call him that because he did say he does not like being called John Eric. He wants either J.E. or Sully. And
but I also hate it.
Yeah, after seeing Stephen Ross's statement where he wrote down like John Eric 5 or 6 times, I'm like, yeah, I can understand why he doesn't want to be called that. But yeah, to me and Jordan, that was on paper a home run hire. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, time will ultimately tell, but I think he fits a lot of what the Dolphins need from their next general manager. They need a guy who's focused on the draft. They need a guy who's focused on acquiring young players and building through the draft, because what they were building before was effectively a tower of paper cards. It was bound to fall apart eventually.
And it did quickly.
Yeah, like it quickly fell apart, and it didn't quickly fall apart because Miami wasn't drafting good players, because a lot of their young guys were good players and they were developing. But the issue is when you're so top heavy and you have so many quote unquote stars who fit a certain system and fit a certain play and are 30 plus years old on the wrong side of 30, eventually they're not going to be as good as they once were. And so the truth is, right, like I don't think this roster is far away from competing for a playoff spot. I don't think this roster is a complete mess like some want to say. I don't think this is a roster where you have to tank to, tear it down to the shreds and rebuild it again like you did when you were, trying to get Tua Tagovailoa. But you also can't keep just acquiring expensive stars and hoping that eventually the cap problems don't come back to bite you in the butt. Because the truth is, the reason why the Dolphins are now in this situation where we're talking about what's up with Tua, what's up with, Tyreek Hill and all these other guys, is because the Dolphins spent so much time focused on just the next big move and not focused on what it looks like 5 years down the line. And man, they need to get away from that. They need to be able to acquire draft talent, guys who are going to help them win now, but also help them develop a core for the future. And there's few teams in college football who have done that as good as the Packers have. When you look at their roster and how much of that is built from the draft, how much of that is built from successful draft picks in the early rounds and the middle rounds, that's what the Dolphins need. They need to be able to build a core of guys who are going to be able to compete with them. And I think the biggest part of it, right, is that like the Packers defense this year, it's pretty draft heavy. You look at a lot of the guys that they've got, it's guys like Edgerrin Cooper, Rashawn Gary, their defensive linemen. They're all drafted guys who they've picked and they developed, and then they went out and when the time was right, traded for Micah Parsons, signed Xavier McKinney. It wasn't like how many stars can we throw in a room and just go, man, they could figure it out eventually. Like that's not how football works. You have to be able to build a team, and Chris Grier was never building a team. He was just building a group of cool names together.
He was acquiring assets.
Yeah. And something that's been talked about by many people, Chris Grier, and we did mention this yesterday, Chris Grier deferred to the coach to the point where a lot of people originally said that's an asset, to where it became a negative, because then something that's shown in the history of time, it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are, coaches should not be picking their players because they are not good at talent eval from a draft standpoint. And what you end up doing,
they just don't have the time.
No, you don't. When you have a GM, the thing I always hear is the GM is the one that sets the culture, sets what the philosophy of the team is, not the other way around. So like Kev said earlier, you get a coach who matches the philosophy of the general manager. And Adam Gase had a different philosophy than Brian Flores, and Brian Flores had a different philosophy than Mike McDaniel. So what you end up getting is you just get a hodgepodge group of guys that may have worked for one system, but not the other. And I think that ultimately cost us. And even to go a little bit more macro, Josh Boyer runs a different defense than Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio runs a different defense from Anthony Weaver. So again, it's just a very, very difficult situation to run a team that way. And I'm not even going to get into the offensive coordinator stuff because I think we've had, like, Mike McDaniels does his own system, and I do like his system at its core.
I like aspects of it.
Yeah, at its core, not what it became, because Mike fell too in love with the big play, I think. But I don't even know what philosophies Chad O'Shea, Chan Gailey, um, Eric Studsville, and Godsey had. Who, congrats to Godsey, who is now the offensive coordinator of his alma mater. But it's just been a mess. So now you're going to get someone who will have that philosophy. And something the Packers do traditionally is they do not draft the sexy picks early. They spend a lot of their premium assets on both in the trenches, linebacker. The joke was until this year they don't draft first round wide receivers at all.
And the drafting of Matthew Golden will not help in the case of going back and doing that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be for a lot of Dolphin fans, I think it is going to be a culture shock to see how Sully runs this team. I am curious to see who he brings with him from the Packers. It does sound like Champ Kelly is staying, by the way, which I'm perfectly fine with him staying within the organization.
Can I just say that I thought his Instagram post read like a LinkedIn influencer, and that is now the funniest thing that I can't stop thinking about.
I thought it was a little weird.
I thought it was weird. I thought it was funny. You know what? I get it. You lost a job, but like also bad. Stop writing like that.
But he didn't lose a job.
He just didn't get it.
Yeah, he lost an opportunity at a job. Like
I'm going to say this to everybody listening. First, definitely make sure you look at the YouTube, like and subscribe to us. But Champ Kelly, I know he was one of the final four. It was, and Kev, you can back me up or not on this. I really think for most of this process, it was a two-person job.
Yeah.
And that was Sullivan and actually Josh Williams.
Yes.
But then the Harbaugh situation inserted a third person in Chad Alexander. Champ Kelly was never going. If Champ Kelly, Jordan, you said this to me privately, if Champ Kelly was our GM, something went terribly wrong with the interviews. And everybody knows this. I am ever the optimist with the Dolphins, always try and give people a positive look on things. What's up, Carpet Dinosaur? But I would give Champ Kelly a chance to succeed or fail on his own. But in reality, at the same time, if Champ Kelly was the general manager, it literally would have ended up being like the Dennis Hickey situation, which I said there wasn't going to be, because it shows that, quite frankly, that Stephen Ross didn't learn anything. But I think it's clear he has learned something because, first of all, he actually got an outside consultant in Troy Aikman, who is also now, it turns out, and I think we all knew this was going to happen even if they didn't said it wouldn't originally. Troy Aikman is now going to be a consultant for the head coaching search. But in the past, he relied on people like Carl Peterson, who was at that point was way past his anything, and Mike Tannenbaum, who I would not rely on for anything. But getting Aikman involved, I definitely do think helps. So, Kev, Jordan, what were your thoughts when Troy Aikman was involved with the GM process, and what are your thoughts? What do you think it's leading to him being part of the head coaching search?
I think in general, I was concerned that it was just going to be a thing where like you need a guy who's going to make the decision for you because you can't make the decision. Like I was genuinely a little like maybe weirded out about like, why are we bringing in a Monday Night Football analyst to make the to help hire a general manager, right? Because there are plenty of fire general managers who you could help make that decision too. But it's like, I think what it does is it allows them to have an outside voice who's able to talk to coaches and general managers across the league and get a better idea of who they're hiring, right? It's no different than like in college football, teams hire search committees all the time. The search committee isn't there to make the decision for good coaching searches. The search committee is there to help you get background checks, to help you build out a pros and cons list for every guy that you're going after. And I think that's what Troy Aikman was there to do, was there to be like, hey, this is a guy who is, highly thought after across the league. This is a guy who, people really like, but here's what some people are saying. or here's what some people are saying about him that's good and positive. And I think it helps you make a good decision. At this point, why not keep going with it? If he wants to keep doing it, I've got no issues with him continuing to do it. And in terms of like hiring J.E. Sullivan, it was the only hire that kind of made sense to me, because it's like, you can't keep talking about how you want to do things a different way and then just go hire a guy who is like a quote unquote buddy of Mike McDaniel, or we can't keep doing this a different way. And then you go hire a guy who got one interview with you because John Harbaugh was fired in the middle of your coaching search, right? Like, there's really no way that this would have made sense any other way for me if your entire discussion of why you fired Chris Greer and why you're doing this a different way is because what you were doing wasn't working. We can't keep going on like this. You can't keep going back to the well of guys who would fit what used to work. That hasn't worked in 20 years, but hey, man, you got to keep doing it one more time in case it works that one more time.
Yeah, I mean, the timeline of it with Alexander being added in and stuff like that did feel rushed. I think ultimately Aikman was brought in because he knows the league very well. He threw out the weeks being on Monday Night Football, and I think it adds the fact that he's who he is, but he is going around talking to a lot of guys from a lot of teams and getting a lot of insights, probably from a lot of higher up execs, and kind of was just able for the Dolphins to help them make a short list. But I do think that Stephen Ross, Brandon Shore, Garfinkel, I think that they left the last interview feeling very confident that John Eric Sullivan had the best vision for the Miami Dolphins. And Brett, we've talked about it so many times that the person that we want to get the job, both for GM and for head coach, is the person that has the best vision for the Miami Dolphins. And I think they brought that guy in. I do expect him to bring a couple guys from Green Bay down with him. I assume their director, I think it's director of player personnel. He has a name that sounds like Woj. I'm just going to call him Woj. It sounds like he's going to get bumped up into that assistant GM position. So I expect the guy, St. Thomas kid, went to UCF. Matt Malaspina, who is the director of scouting or director of college scouting for the Packers. I do expect him to come over with John Eric Sullivan, just because the way that the Packers have promoted over time is director of college scouting to director of player personnel to assistant GM to GM. And I think that we have an opportunity to probably make Malaspina the number 2 next to John Eric Sullivan. So, Brett, I know you mentioned before a guy or two that may come over. So that's a guy I expect. And then the problem is when you look at the Packers and you look at their front office, when I did this exercise last night where I started going through and looking at all the guys in the Packers front office and who had connection to Sullivan or maybe connection to South Florida and things of that nature, a lot of those guys have been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's funny. The Packers have, I saw a tweet yesterday. There are 7 either GMs or presidents of football ops who came from that organization.
Yeah, but they're like, they have a couple scouts and I don't have the exact list in front of me. I just remember looking last night that had been there 40 plus years. So I don't think it's likely that any of those guys are guys that are going to come over with Sullivan. But I do expect guys that were on his direct team that aren't getting big promotions, and maybe we can offer an extra step up. I do expect some of them to be intrigued by the job.
Yeah. Kev, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably end up bringing Malaspina over. There's a few other like scouts who may come over. Typically, though, like, I'm just going to warn everyone now because they're going to be like, why is the scouting room staying the same?
Yeah.
There is never a GM who's going to clear out the scouting room 3 months before a draft.
Right.
They're going to have to rely on those guys to help them compile scouting reports, compile combine, interviews and stuff. Like, there is no team that is clearing house on scouts 3 months, I think 4 months before draft starts. It goes like, we'll figure it out on the fly here, guys. Like, everyone here is just going to have to figure it out on the fly. Like, so any like scouting changes in terms of like pro scouts, college scouts, that's going to happen after the draft, because there's like a 3-month period where you can just do that and you can get out of it and then start scouting for the next draft. But like, Malaspina is like really the only name that makes sense in terms of hiring someone from the Packers' current staff, because it feels like everyone else is going to end up getting a promotion of some kind because Sullivan left. But I think that maybe, you can convince 1 or 2 guys to come for a different title. Like, it's always going to be weird. Malaspina just kind of feels like a likely candidate given his ties to Florida, South Florida, and the fact that he's their director of college scouting and could get into what was J.E. Sullivan's role in Green Bay, get it in Miami.
I would just want to pull that up. Our producer mentioned it there in the comments. Jordan Schultz just tweeted a couple of minutes ago. Although John Harbaugh is one of the Dolphins' top head coaching targets, expect Miami to take a calculated approach with a series of candidates. And to us, that's similar to what we did with the GM search. It's not like one side of the ball is a priority right now. It's about landing the best candidate to restore the franchise. So that just came out. So I just wanted to throw that up there and throw that to you guys.
And real quick, to go to Kev's point, just to give everybody listening an idea, I do expect you'll see 2 or 3 names come to the front office with Sullivan.
In higher executive.
In higher level,
Yes.
But when you do scouts, you keep them through the draft cycle, and then you clear out the scouting after that. So
now, it's an interesting question of if he's bringing his own scouts with him, if that is part of the conversation, or do you simply rely on the scouts that are in house?
It's probably going to be both, but you're going to
probably bring 1 or 2 guys who you trust and can help kind of fill that out. But in terms of like building a new scouting staff, which is what I think a lot of people are going to want, that happens in May. There's one name that's kind of interesting in terms of like scout. I was looking at this earlier. Venzel Bulware is one of their pro scouts, and he was an offensive lineman for the Miami Hurricanes. So
cool.
I wonder if that's something that happens. And if it does happen, we can go back and clip this later, because I was right. Everyone else was wrong. You can't prove me any other way. But
you were first because
I was first.
Yeah, no,
I'm the only one who was looking at Venzel Bulware. But like, the truth is, the moves that are going to happen now is like director of player personnel, assistant GM, the roles that are going to help Sullivan in free agency in terms of managing cap, in terms of managing those kind of situations. Those are going to be the hires that happen now, not like, hey, who's our next college scout for the Great Plains region?
Correct.
That's going to happen in the offseason, because that's the only time it could happen.
Yep. And yes, do have to give Carpet Dinosaur credit. He did tweet out 2 hours before J.E. Sullivan was announced as a GM that we would be hiring J.E. Sullivan.
Not only did he do that, and we haven't even talked about this, but he also tweeted about an hour before I did that Matt Malaspina made sense as a guy to come over with John Eric Sullivan.
He did.
So Carpet Dinosaur is quickly turning into one of the lead insiders for the Miami Dolphins.
He did, and Ghost of Adam Gase and the Dive Bar do owe him a raise for.
Well, I saw they reinstated him.
They did reinstate him, but now he needs a bit of a raise because he's doing the work. But now we're going into coaching search. A couple names have come out in the last couple hours. Like we mentioned, Clint Kubiak is interviewing today. We are expected to speak to John Harbaugh and Kevin Stefanski this week. Jordan, why don't you bring up? We're just going to go over tiers of names. We're just going to name names. We're not going to name everybody, but I think how we're going to do is we're just going to kind of come up with a list of names that we expect the Dolphins to talk to.
And we'll go the 3 of us. Anybody that wants to throw out a name, and we'll put them on this list and see how much of a list we could build.
Yep. We'll start with John Harbaugh. I think we can all agree Harbaugh would be your B tier 1. I do have questions on now if he's coming. Now, if he wants the job, you obviously give John Harbaugh the job. But I do think what's come out is he's doing research on quarterbacks. Our quarterback situation isn't the greatest right now. The draft isn't the greatest, but, I do have nightmares that we're going to draft Ty Simpson in the first round. But
no, Brett, don't do that to me yet.
It does sound like, yep, we did talk about this, and we will get to him in a second, but we did talk to that.
There's one other name I would like to put on tier 1 just while we're having fun with this exercise. And I want to be clear that I don't think that he would even return the phone call. But do I have permission to put Curt Cignetti in tier 1?
Sure,
go ahead. He's not returning, you said it, he's not returning the phone call, but why the hell not?
No, and this is, let's be clear, this coaching job he's done is probably the best ever in college.
And I think that when a guy is doing the best head coaching job ever, I think that you have to put him in tier 1 of a list when you're looking for a head coach.
I would also throw Mike LaFleur or Matt LaFleur on that list.
I don't want to throw Mike LaFleur in tier 1.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur. I'm going to get him mixed up this entire coaching search. I would throw Matt LaFleur on there, even if I don't think he's getting the job, because
is it EUR or UER?
Ooh, putting me on the spot. Give me 1 second. EUR.
Cool.
Yep. Now, real quick, like I said, I don't think Harbaugh's going to come here because it sounds like he kind of wants a bit more of a clear quarterback situation. But you take him. Cignetti, he's not returning call. LaFleur, Jordan, you mentioned this. You think we could trade for him because, for those who don't know, he is entering the last year of his contract. They are negotiating, or they are going to negotiate this weekend. That came out this morning. I do have questions if he would be interested because he is very close with Mike McDaniel, but I would definitely go with that. We are keeping him on for now, Mr. S. Apparently he's signing an extension.
Never mind then, guys. So that was a fun pipe dream for 5 minutes.
Yep. So we can take him off.
He's off.
But
it would be funny if after all this, we do this entire exercise now. 3 minutes ago, Ian Rappaport report. You ready?
Yep.
The Miami Dolphins have put in an interview request with 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh.
Okay. I would put him in. This is just my personal opinion. I'll leave this up to the group. I would put him in tier 3. And here's my reason. I do think he has head coaching qualities. I think he is even with the Jets, you could tell that he got the players to run through a wall for him, and he's made a huge impact both for the Packers after he got fired last year as well as the 49ers.
And let me say something. That 49ers defense, even before the season on paper, did not look very good. And they got ravaged by injuries, and he has that defense playing pretty damn hard for him.
The only question mark I have on Robert Saleh, and this is maybe the reason why I don't think he's a tier 2 candidate for me, because I think from a defensive side, from a leadership side, from resetting culture stuff, he does all of that really well. But he had 2 offensive coordinators hire in New York, and it was Mike LaFleur, who was not ready for that job, and it failed miserably, and it was Nathaniel Hackett.
Well, he had Nathaniel Hackett forced on him. Let's be clear.
But so even if he was forced on him, which is certainly, I think, the likely scenario here, we don't know who he's hiring as his next offensive coordinator. And I this is kind of my hesitations with a guy who we'll certainly get to in Jeff Hafley of you have to hire an offensive coordinator too. That has to be a part of the deal and has to be a part of the entire hire here, because the truth is, right, even if we're fixing the defense and we're fixing the culture, you can't go back down the Brian Flores well of, we're fixing one side of the ball, but the other side is just royally screwed. And I think that's what ended Brian Flores' tenure. And it's certainly something that could end a guy like Robert Saleh's tenure of he's a really good candidate, and I think there would be a lot of things that he does really well. But I mean, if he's just not going to hire an offensive coordinator who is up to code and up to what you expect from an NFL offensive coordinator, we'll be here going back down the same conversation 2 years from now.
Yeah. And what I would say about Saleh is he does have that jet stink to him. But I will 100% say, and I do believe this, as long as Woody Johnson is the owner of the New York Jets, nobody can succeed in that position.
Now, the first question I would ask him is how much does he hate his time in New York and how much does he hate the New York Jets? Because if he hates them, he's a tier 1 candidate because he's going to be motivated to screw him over every time. And you know what? I kind of want that still. So,
yeah, so I do think that there are positives to Saleh. I think that the initial we're taking the Jets reruns are there, but I do think he's a good coach. But I would be hesitant, like you said, to know what his plan is for the offensive side of the ball. But that's also, I think, the thought and the conversation with any defensive coordinator that you're going to interview. The problem is we've seen Saleh not have success with it and it cost him a job. But every defensive coordinator, and we're going to get to another one right now because I'm going to propose a name, it's a question. So the next name I'll propose to you guys is Jesse Minter.
Tier 2.
Yeah, I would say tier 2. He would be in my tier 1 just because I'm a Michigan homer. And like I said, I love Jesse Minter. He's basically the third Harbaugh as far as I'm concerned. The question becomes he's just, at the end of the day, he just doesn't have that much experience as a coordinator. He has the 2 years at Michigan. He has 1 year at Vandy and now 2 years with the Chargers. He is a coach's son. His dad is a legendary coach in Ohio, Rick Minter, for Cincinnati. So he does have the bloodlines. I love his attitude. It's difficult to put him in tier 1, though, just because there's no track record. And he is basically limited to Ravens play, like Ravens staff. I also
Ravens staff are guys Harbaugh hired for the Chargers because that's like really his only true like connections.
Yeah. And
that to me keeps him from being in tier 1. Tier 1 has to be, I mean, you look at those names that we're putting on that top list, and I'm going to propose another one that is going to be kind of in this conversation, but I think that Jesse Minter just doesn't have, he may very well end up a tier 1 coach wherever he goes, but he's not a tier 1 coach at this moment.
Although the thing that intrigues me about him is you mentioned the Rick Minter link. Is it possible that he can go down the Rick Minter tree of hiring an offensive coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
Because Minter was an NFL defensive coordinator for a very long time. And he was with a lot of different staffs. He was with, I think more notably like Chip Kelly in Philadelphia before it all ended there. But like there were some names there that were interesting to me. Not Pat Shurmur, who was his offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly's offensive coordinator. That's not happening. I won't let that happen to my glorious football team. But like Deuce Staley, who is the running backs coach in Cleveland. You have Justin Peele, who is the tight ends coach in Tampa. Press Taylor is the passing game coordinator in, I think, Chicago. Is a guy who, has been an NFL offensive coordinator before. Is that something they can go down? If so, I think that makes him a tier 1 higher. Again, there are a lot of things that I can't answer for, but if we're just going based off of who Jesse Minter has worked under, the group of like offensive coordinator candidates is like Shane Day and Marcus Brady, who are both in LA. And well, I think they're both fine candidates. I don't think either are going to like completely surprise you and give you this insane like happiness that other guys can.
Yeah.
You let's guys go ready down for the next name.
Go ahead.
Kevin Stefanski.
Tier 1.
I would say I would put him in tier 1. I have some questions. Let's be clear. The Cleveland Browns screwed him over. I do not blame him for everything, but there is a part of me for as good as I think Stefanski's been, 2-time coach of the year, I always have an issue when something goes south and a guy has multiple bad years in a row, even if I don't believe it's all his fault, I do have some concerns jumping right into another situation that would be a rebuild. But I do think he would be on paper a good hire. I think he would add toughness to this team. It's easy to forget that he comes from a very similar background that Mike McDaniel did, so it wouldn't be too much change from a play calling standpoint, but we would be a tougher team. But I do have questions about Stefanski.
I think the biggest thing about Stefanski for me is even with being, having Deshaun Watson thrown on you and having to try and make that work, and then having this year Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders as your quarterback, and there never being a true direction with how you were building the team or anything. And again, I don't think we could say that like Mike McDaniel's at fault for that and then not say Kevin Stefanski's at fault for that. Like Kevin Stefanski was certainly involved in making decisions on this roster, and the Browns roster is not talented enough, but they always found ways to win games they didn't deserve to win. And the culture there never tanked. There was never a point where there were like reports coming out that people hated playing for the Cleveland Browns, other than the fact that they always lost, that people thought, Kevin Stefanski is not a qualified person to lead this team. There were never reports like that. Those reports came out with Mike McDaniel, and now were they fair? Probably not, but they came out. We haven't seen that come out with a guy like Stefanski, who's won playoff games, who's, a good play caller, all the things that you would want out of a head coach. He's got it, but there is also the concern of like, this fell off a cliff really quickly in Cleveland. And is that a Kevin Stefanski issue, or is that a Cleveland Browns issue? That's something that can only get figured out with time.
Yeah. Let's go through the chat because there's some names brought up. We'll go with someone who is interviewing, Clint Kubiak. Let me say I do like Clint Kubiak. I think he is a great prospect. I would personally have him as tier 3. And here's why. He has been the offensive coordinator in 2021 for the Vikings. Then he went to Denver as passing game coordinator in 22. Then he was in San Francisco, same title in 23. Offensive coordinator for the Saints last year, and now he's the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Now, some of that is circumstantial because he's gone into some rough situations. Like last year was New Orleans, he didn't have a quarterback. But I do have concerns putting him higher than tier 3 right now, just because this is really the first year he's had a good offense. So it is the hot name. And while I do think he can and will be a good head coach down the road, I do have concerns going with someone who really only has 1 year of success.
Yeah, I'm battling right in between tier 2 and tier 3, just because there is something there. I think that he is going to be a good head coach. But I think that if you're going to go and hire a guy like Clint Kubiak with the resume of Clint Kubiak, and now look, I've never really listened to him speak in depth. Like, I don't know his plan for the football team. But at that point, to me, it's a question of, is that a clear upgrade to Mike McDaniel? And if it's somebody John Eric Sullivan feels confident in, that's fine. But I think that there are names out there and guys out there that will help us through what's likely to be a 1-year rebuild than Kubiak.
My biggest concern with Kubiak is some of the issues that happened in New Orleans and might have killed his offenses in New Orleans are kind of the reason why Seattle might not go on a deep playoff run this year. It's like, yeah, they can draw up incredibly explosive passing plays. That is a thing that they can do better than any team in football right now. But they struggle to consistently run the football. Hey, is this starting to sound like another team that we just watched for 4 years? Like, yeah. I think in general, the issues that he has are issues that Mike McDaniel had as his time as the offensive play caller and head coach in Miami. To me, and this isn't saying that these two guys are the same people, it feels like we're just introducing the same issues. We're just throwing a different name and a different face on those issues. I think that they need to go away from the wide zone, explosive passing play offense because it hasn't worked for them. They need to shift away from that. And I think if you hire Clint Kubiak, that's not shifting away from it. That's kind of just trying to build off of what worked and what didn't work with Mike McDaniel and go, well, we can figure it out eventually. There are likely just better candidates for me. And I mean, look, Clint Kubiak's a guy you interview because Clint Kubiak's one of the best offensive coordinators in football right now. You would be a fool to not interview him. But he's not a guy who I think would be even like in my top 5 of potential interviews or candidates.
Yeah. Lou Anarumo. I do like Lou Anarumo. I think he got a raw deal. I think it's very clear, especially after watching Al Golden's defense, he got a very raw deal in Cincinnati. I thought he did a good job when he took over our defense from Kevin Coyle. I think he has a great track record developing defensive backs, which we absolutely need. But I'm putting him in tier 3 just because I don't see the excitement from him. It would be a boring hire, and I think it would be a decent hire, but I just think I don't think that's one that's really going to invigorate the fan base.
For me, the reason I'm going to say this is I think it's a tier 2 hire because I think what he does is he changes the culture. And I know that's a buzzword that's going to be thrown around a lot with any head coach candidate that's around this team. But the general truth is, for me, the Dolphins had a culture issue. That was abundantly clear with everything we saw. And Lou Anarumo in 2-3 different places has changed the culture. Indianapolis looked like a different team this year. And I think a lot of that is probably on Lou Anarumo and Shane Steichen. It was a different situation in Cincinnati where, hey, man, they were good defense. They placed the blame on his feet and said it's his fault. It's not his fault. Watch the defense this year. Tell me it's his fault. I think what Lou Anarumo does is he changes the culture and he puts you back to where you need to be. The thing I love about him is his defense isn't rigid. His defense isn't like, hey, this is what we're going to run. You have to find a way to, get to this point. I think there's a lot of stuff that he can do with his defense that is, place to place. He's able to change his defense and still win games. I think if you're a team like the Dolphins who are going to have to completely rebuild this identity, that's a name to me that's a little intriguing. And I would at least say that, like, if we're talking about defensive candidates who are going to potentially get an interview, he would be top 2, top 3 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to break the tie. It's funny enough because I think that there's something to being a tier 2 candidate or a tier 1 candidate. I think you have to go above and beyond. I actually had him as a tier 4 candidate, but like the very top of the tier 4 poking into tier 3. So I'm going to put him in tier 3. I think that the pros are exactly what you said, Kev. I think he changes the culture. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He changes the culture. I think he comes in and brings some maturity to the team. But to me, in a way, as a head coach, he's 59 years old and would be a first-time head coach. It's concerning. Say it again.
It's concerning. Like, I think we can just say it as it is. It's concerning.
It's a little Joe Philbin-y.
Very much so. Actually, very much so.
Which to me is why it would be a safe hire, but it wouldn't be an exciting hire. And I don't know that that's the direction really that we're going. I don't know if we're going to go a very, very young green coach, but I also don't think if we're going to go with an older coach, I don't know if it's going to be a guy that's a first-time head coach.
Can we go down this path? Chris Shula, let's do Chris Shula and Jeff Hafley because I think they're pretty similar.
Were you about to say Jeff Hafley?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would put them both, Chris Shula and Jeff Hafley, as tier 2.
I agree.
Chris Shula would definitely excite the fan base. Again, the issue you have, and it's a good tree to be in, but he's just got the Rams coaching tree. Now I'm sure he's got more connections
Well, coming to Miami, being a Shula, he might get a little more of a tree.
The concern I have is I feel that there would be almost an unrealistic expectation for Shula here.
Very quickly, and Brett, I'm going to let you finish. But Kev, do you also have both of them in tier 2?
Yes. I'll let Brett finish on Chris Shula, then I'll go on him.
I just wanted to start putting them into tier 2 as long as we're
So yeah, I think it would be an exciting hire for the fan base. Unfortunately, I think it would be for the wrong reasons. But if you want to poach from a coaching staff, you poach from McVay's staff. They are having success around the league, so I would get that. We'll talk about Halfley after, but yeah, Kev, go ahead with Shula.
I really like the idea of Chris Shula. Again, I get the concern that he's only been in one place, and that's a Sean McVay tree. I think we can also just say it that Sean McVay helps develop quarterback or head coaches. Like, I think that it's not a surprise that every head coach who leaves the Sean McVay tree finds success somewhere else. Excuse me. But it's like, there is this idea that, like, is it going to work? Let's try this again. There's an idea that if this is going to work, it may only work in Miami because, again,
Pelisaro did just confirm we are interviewing Chris Shula. We put in a request.
Awesome. Nice. Perfect. Again, it's a concern, but it's also, I think, a positive that he is Don Shula's grandson heading to Miami, because I think that may give him a little bit more motivation to make this work, to figure this out. But also, man, are we going to be sitting here going, well, it has to work because he's Don Shula's grandson, and that will never not work. Like, I think that there's kind of two ways that happens. The only thing on Chris Shula is I'd want to know which Sean McVay assistant he's stealing to be his offensive coordinator, because I don't think we have to go very far down the list of guys who he would hire as his first offensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, I would not like Zach Robinson. There's their like assistant pass game coordinator, Nate Shieldhouse, is the guy I'd hire. If we're gonna have to hire someone from that tree,
Shieldhouse was getting talk about possible
head coaching interviews because he's really damn good at his job. Man, if we can do Shieldhouse and Chris Shula in Miami, sign me up. Sign me up 10 out of 10 times. We will figure this out together.
This is something I love about Chris Shula, and I'm going to change. This is my favorite thing about him as a candidate, and I'll change the screen and I'll go back for a second. Is this tweet right here? This right here, to me, and Brett, I talked about it when the three of us were on talking about head coaches. I said I want a head coach that hasn't only had success with a lot of talent. I want a guy that has been able to have success on a budget. And although the Rams have spent premium draft resources on defensive players, this right here, to me, is very telling when it comes to the success of Chris Shula.
Yeah. I just doesn't sound like Nathan Shieldhouse is going to be a assistant too long, though. He might even get head coaching interviews now. But if he brings Shieldhouse, I'd be behind that. But you know that he's leaving after a year or two to be a head coach, because he is seen as a stud. Halfley, I think people are focusing a little bit too much on the Boston College time for him. Mentioned it before. Boston College has one of, if not the worst, NIL programs in the Power Four. Halfley left that job willingly because he was just tired of dealing with it. He wasn't getting the support. But also, something you have to look at is just look at Boston College's history. I think their last 9-win season was 20 years ago. And they only have, and the last time they won 10 games, Matt Ryan was their starting quarterback. So if you look at his record at Boston College, it's not impressive, but that's just what Boston College is. They're a 7-5 team that'll bottom out once or twice every couple of years and then go back to being 7-5. They really
isn't that what the Dolphins are lately?
Sort of.
We're hiring the Dolphins of head coaches, baby.
Yeah. But
the problem I have with hiring Halfley and Brett, I agree with you. Okay. I agree with you that Boston College is a tough place to win. But in a college football era where there's a coach that's 108 games over 500 and about to win a national championship at Indiana, who's undefeated right now and as a program is still 192 games under 500 as a program. They would need to go 16-0. They would need to go 16-0 for 12 consecutive seasons to get back to 500. And he's won there. He's won at James Madison. He's won at Elon. He's won at IUPUI. I think that I didn't win at Boston College. I don't think that's something that we can just jump over.
Here's the thing, though. James Madison is a sleeping giant, and you see that this year with Bob Chesney as their head coach, and they're moving on. They have the money. Indiana, yes, they are just investing in the football program now, but Indiana has investors too, and in the current landscape of college football, you need rich investors or rich boosters who are willing to put into the team. So those two programs have it. Boston College doesn't.
The issue of comparing anything to Indiana is Indiana has a ton of rich boosters who want things to happen. They want wins to happen on the field.
I understand that. I'm just saying that the Hafley being under 500, it can't be something to me that we're like, oh, that's okay.
I don't necessarily care about the record with Hafley. My concern is in 4 years, he had 3 offensive coordinators, and his best offense at Boston College was 68th in the country. That is middle of the pack in college football.
And I looked at him, and he pulled all of his coordinators from the NFL.
Yeah, I think that the truth of the matter is, my biggest issue with Jeff Hafley is not that he didn't win at Boston College, because no one has really won at Boston College since 2008, and we're all just reliving the glory days in Chestnut Hill. But it's the biggest issue is that he had 4 years to get an offensive coordinator hire right, and none of them have been good hires. They had an offense where they averaged 17 points per game, and they didn't develop a quarterback. They had Vil Jurgasevich. They had Dennis Grossel, and they had Tommy Castellanos. Those were his 3 quarterbacks as the head coach. And so, man, the biggest question mark for him is the same question mark we had about Robert Saleh and about Lou Anarumo. Who the hell is going to be calling plays for you on offense? Is a guy like Bobby Slowick, who he's worked with in the past, who is in Miami right now, who has offensive experience? Is it a guy like Steve Shimko, who was his last offensive coordinator at Boston College, who's the quarterback's coach in Dallas, who is highly respected? What are you going to just hire from the Green Bay Packers tree? A guy like Jason Vrabel is at least interesting to me, but I don't think we can sit here and say with confidence that we know what an offense looks like under Jeff Hafley. I have zero concerns about his defense.
And that's why I had to move him from tier 2 to tier 3.
That's fair, because I have zero concerns about him building a defense. I guarantee you, if he's our defense or our head coach, we're going to have a top 5 defense at some point during his tenure. But will that be a top 5 defense with a bottom third offense? Because that doesn't do us any favors.
Yeah. Coach Eric Smith, curious where to put Vance Joseph. No Saleh. I would put Vance Joseph in tier 4. He deserves another coaching job. He was not ready for the Denver job when he got it. It was clear. He has done a very good job rebuilding his reputation, I feel. I just don't think he's the right person for the Dolphins. And
it also says something to me about the character of Vance Joseph that he went back as the Broncos defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, I would too when you look at that roster. I would.
Yeah, but I think that to think that in a year we could, if we have one of those coaches that are in tier 1, that Mike McDaniel would come back as our offensive coordinator, that. I think that if Mike McDaniel did that, we would all have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah. I do
want to stop there. Carpet Dinosaur had a question for me. I just don't see it. He has now twice said he has a question for me. So, CD, if you want to put your question, we'll move on to Anthony Weaver.
Tier 4.
I don't think you can hire someone on this staff.
Yeah, that's basically it. I'm sure.
I would say, looking from a candidacy standpoint, Brett, sorry to cut you off. Like, looking from a candidacy standpoint, he's a tier 2 candidate. But you can't sit here, and again, the similar issues with keeping Mike McDaniel. You can't sit here and say we're fixing everything. This can't keep happening, and then going, "Hey, man, you were here the last 2 years. You want to try and fix this now?" That's how we got into this mess. We can't keep getting back into this mess, guys.
Yeah, I just want a complete reset.
In the words of our president, no, I did not know this. You're telling me this for the first time.
Yeah. But yeah, Weaver, it's much like with Kev. I just want a clean slate. If the new coach wants Anthony Weaver as the defensive coordinator, fine. I still probably wouldn't be thrilled with it. I just think we need the hard reset. We just need to get rid of everybody from this coaching staff. So I can't back Anthony Weaver higher than tier 4.
Can I propose an interesting name who is a former Dolphins coach that I think is probably going to end up getting an interview here pretty soon?
Sure.
Adam Gase.
Anthony Campanile. Adam Gase is tier 8, bottom of hell. I can't do that again.
Campanile I have is tier 2. I actually think my initial thought is he's more likely than Halfley. There again are concerns. He's only 1 year as a defensive coordinator, but he has coached both sides of the ball. He's been offensive coordinator, albeit in high school, been a tight ends coach and wide receivers coach in college, coaches both sides of the ball. He would pull into that Harbaugh coaching tree more than likely. I think he'd be tier 2. I think we kind of screwed him over not promoting him to defensive coordinator, not once, but twice. And that's why he left. Very well respected. You will not find a player who does not love playing for Campanile. And he has some, this may not be a good thing. He has some Nick Sirianni in him where he's a dickhead, but it would make things not boring. So
I think that's just the Italian in him, if we're being honest.
It is. And I think to me, he's somewhere in between tier 2 and tier 3. I think that I love his energy. I think that the easy comparison that people are making is to say his energy is a lot like Dan Campbell. But I think that to me, I don't know. And again, it's going to be an interview process. I see a little more poise with also aggression in Jesse Minter and Chris Shula than I do with Campanile. I see a little bit of you don't want your head coach to be willing to go that far in him a little bit. And I think that while when winning, his energy is great, I want a guy that is going to also not get stale and we're not going to get sick of in moments of losing. And I think that Chris Shula and Jesse Minter are a little more mature, at least from an outsider's perspective. I would put him in tier 2. I have some concerns, but I love his energy and I love what he's doing with the Jags defense. I think they're a sleeper team in the playoffs if they can get through Buffalo.
Here's a stat I saw with him. They have not allowed a rusher to get more than 75 yards this season.
They went into Denver, that defense, and they bullied the Broncos offense.
The thing I really like
I will not.
The thing I really like about Anthony Campanile as a possible candidate is not necessarily that I think he's got like this deep coaching tree, that he's got a lot of guys that he can pull from. To me, it's the fact that he gets blood from a stone everywhere he goes. It doesn't matter what role he's in. It doesn't matter who he's coaching. They're going to play. They're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. They're going to play the way that you want a defense to play. That's what he does. Now, I will say this now. if the idea is that he is bringing Shane Waldron with him as his offensive coordinator, I am never watching another Dolphins game again. If that is the plan for attack in the future, Shane Waldron sucks. But like in general, there are a lot of things that I think Anthony Campanile gives you that Jesse Minter gives you, Chris Shula gives you, even like Jeff Hafley and Robert Saleh give you. I just don't think he does it at the same level as a guy like Minter and Shula. I'd still put him tier 2, but he's like below those two guys, right? It's like kind of that teetering of tier 2, tier 3 of like.
So this is what I'm going to do. Do we agree that Stefanski's like tier 1B?
Yeah.
Okay. So then tier 2B is going to now start.
I would put Hafley and Saleh in that tier 2, for being honest.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to help me. Anile?
Yes.
Yes.
Guess you didn't have to help me.
I don't know about you guys, but I think I'd put Saleh and Hafley in that same tier 2B tier.
I would put Hafley. I would not put Saleh.
Yeah, we can do that. That's a perfect, because I think Saleh is just a guy.
To me, like, this is unfair. And I would, like I said, anybody on this list, if they become our head coach, they will get a chance to succeed and fail on their own merits. I will not complain about any of them. I just can't get it. The Jet stink is just still too fresh for Saleh.
It's in there for me. Okay, here's an interesting name. Okay, I was actually going to mention that. I think he's tier 3, but
I think it's tier 4. Like, if you're selling me on him as an offensive coordinator, I would take it.
Again, he's a guy that went under 500 at Texas Tech.
I'll say I think he's tier 4 because I don't think the optics of hiring a fired offensive coordinator as your head coach looks really good on a team trying to fix things.
No. And the thing that happens is
he might even be tier 4B for me.
No, I think he's tier 4. I think he's in that same tier as Vance Joseph.
His offenses look exciting, but they kind of get figured out. Again, sound familiar. And both with Arizona and Texas Tech, we worry about defensive coaches who can figure out offense. Cliff Kingsbury cannot figure out defense. So I would put him tier 4. So no, and like I said earlier, no Carpet Dinosaur. I'm not putting Sharon Moore in here. He is never coaching another football game on any level again.
Kev, you were going to throw another name out there?
Yeah. Are we ready for this? Because I feel like this is going to cause some drama and dismay.
I threw out Kurt Signetti second. So,
well, I feel like we have to talk about it because the link's Mike McCarthy.
I was going to talk about that. So this is a perception versus reality situation. Because if you just look at the numbers, there's not much difference between Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh.
There really isn't. I saw that the other day. There's really not much of a difference.
But the perception is different. I think McCarthy would have a high floor, low ceiling, whereas I think you would see us competing for playoffs. We might look a little exciting during the season, but then fall apart. So nothing short of what we've seen before. I will say 2B for him just because the resume and the records warrant that. But perception-wise, I think that's a tier 4.
Again, if the goal is to reset everything about the Miami Dolphins, I think Mike McCarthy does that. If the goal is to be competitive in 2 years, Mike McCarthy is not helping your cause there. The truth is, Mike McCarthy is a good coach. This idea that he's like just a bad coach is insane to me because even when he was in Dallas, they had like 3 12-win seasons. They were a top 5 offense at times. This is not too far ago that he was like a solid coach. But what is he doing to help you? What is the goal with hiring a guy like Mike McCarthy? Is it to just completely reset things and in 2-3 years we'll be looking at another head coach who can take us to that next step? Or is the plan here that when you hire that first head coach, if you're J.E. Sullivan, is this the guy that you think can legitimately win you a Super Bowl? Because I think those two discussions create different possibilities here.
You talked me into a 3.
Well, no, because I think Mike McCarthy won 12 games 3 different times in Dallas. He's won a Super Bowl. There is no head coach on the open market bar John Harbaugh who has a resume like he does. Like
he has the second best NFL resume out of anybody we'll be talking to.
But the biggest issue is he's been to like one NFC title game. One. Like, I think that in general, he's a tier 2B candidate in the sense of like, if you want to get things right in Miami, if you want to get back to winning football games and being competitive and not taking no for an answer, that's what you're going to do with Mike McCarthy. But I would rather go take a chance on a young guy who's going to reset the culture and help you build towards something.
So last night I had some fun. I was saying it would be fun to pair in 2026 in a year that the Dolphins are likely going to be rebuilding to pair John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco. But I think the new narrative I want to start is that it would be fun to pair Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers.
That does not sound fun to me. And Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy hate each other. So that's yeah.
They're like the alter ego to John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's put him 2B.
Yeah, I'm going to put him 2B because of the fact that he has the second best NFL resume. I'll leave him like that for a second. He has the second best resume of any NFL candidate there. Signetti's there more as a formality and partially satire, but also we once pulled Nick Saban. So, hey, we might as well try to call Signetti. But I think that Mike McCarthy has the second best resume, but also he's in almost the Lou Anarumo category of it doesn't excite you. You know, he's not the fiery Anthony Campanile, Chris Shula, Jesse Minter, rah-rah coach that a lot of people want. But I could see Stephen Ross and John Eric Sullivan and everybody else making the decision, including Troy Aikman, who comes from that Dallas lineage, being willing to go into what's going to be some rocky waters with an NFL coach who has had success.
Yeah. What about David Shaw?
I don't think he's even I don't think it's worth talking about. I don't think he's really. I know we talked about him before. I don't think he's.
Yeah, I know that was a name. Remember how mad you were when I threw that name out? Look how far we've come.
Just like tier 4. Like this, Gruden's not going to be part
tier
of
tier 5 next.
So I don't think it's even worth discussing Gruden because he's not going to be part of this hiring cycle. And with
I hate to say 5 or do we put a lower number? I'm going to put tier other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we got to mention them. I'd put Matt Nagy on that list too. No, Matt Nagy's like tier 4.
I think Matt Nagy's on other.
Matt Nagy's other. I don't even think we consider him. John Gruden, like one again. You can't put. I don't think the Dolphins are even going to sniff him because of the whole reason it fell apart in Vegas. I just don't think they will. Joe Brady, I go back and forth on Joe Brady because at the start of the season, I would have had him as one of my favorites, and then it kind of came down. But I do give credit to him where he has reinvented the Bills' offense to be more of a running offense when things were going poorly. I would say 2B for Brady, but I also don't get the impression he's really going to be highly sought after this coaching cycle.
Joe Brady's another name that, just like Clint Kubiak, and I'm going to vote to put him in tier 3, literally next to Clint Kubiak, is it's 2 questions. First of all, what clear upgrade does Joe Brady give you to Mike McDaniel? And what success has Joe Brady had without a superstar roster? Those are the 2 questions that I have.
I think if we're going to be picking between Clint Kubiak and Joe Brady, I'd want Clint Kubiak.
I agree.
And that to me is just the only thing here, because I think that while Joe Brady is a good offensive coordinator, it has never been consistent with him. It's always been an issue with him somewhere. And that is suddenly now again proving itself in Buffalo, where he has one of the best quarterbacks in football, a superhuman who can throw the ball 80 yards down the field. And I'm still sitting here wondering if that offense will get going.
So do we want to call Brady tier 3 or tier 3B?
Tier 3, because I think he has a lot of the same issues as Clint Kubiak, just kind of a different kind of issue. I've got 2 more names that I don't think will be hired, but they're interesting names.
I love interesting names.
If we go back to the Jacksonville coaching tree, their offensive coordinator, Grant Udinsky, is one of the youngest coaches in college in the NFL. He's like 20 years old, it feels like. But everyone who's ever been around the guy has said he is an NFL head coach just waiting for the right opportunity. Would the Dolphins be stupid enough to be the team who gives the 28-year-old his first opportunity?
I don't think so. I would put him in other. It just feels too early for him.
Can you give me the spelling?
Udinski.
First name?
Grant.
Grant. That's right. Like you said, he's too young. He's a guy. Okay. He's their OC?
Yes.
He's a guy that if you're telling me we're going to interview him because we're hiring Mike McCarthy and we want to get to know him because he's going to be our coach in 4 years, okay, fine. But I don't think he's a guy. Again, what does he bring that wouldn't have been brought keeping Mike McDaniel? I don't think you can go through the same a guy trying to figure out how to lead a group of men that you went through early on in Mike McDaniel with this new coach. He has to have that ability, which is why a guy like Mike McCarthy gets bumped up higher on the list. And Kevin, I know you had one more name.
A familiar name. Texans defensive coordinator Matt Burke has called. Now let me say this. He's called their defense since week 4 of the year, and they have been arguably the best defense in football since that time. This is a guy who's been around football for 22 years. This is a guy who's had success helping build defense, but he's never really gotten chances to call defenses until now. I know it's early. Don't get me wrong. I know it's really early to go after Matt Burke.
Mr. S said it best.
I think that there are things I like about Matt Burke. I think he would be in tier 4, though.
Yes.
I'm going tier not ready yet. I'm going to make this bold. And I'm going to put our Jaguars friend.
All right, Mr. S, we're not going to do it. Calm down.
Yeah.
Okay. One more name, Leslie Frazier, who's the assistant head coach in Seattle, 27 years, NFL experience.
Too old.
I wanted him in the early days of knowing Brad and Mr. S. I wanted Leslie Frazier as a Dolphins coach maybe 3 cycles ago.
Do we have to do the discussion on Mike LaFleur, or do we all just agree he's like tier 4?
We're not. He's not an option. I wouldn't even put him on because he's not going to be an option. A couple names who I think will get brought up.
What does Leslie Frazier do right now? You said he's with the Seahawks?
He's the Seahawks assistant head coach.
Well, we're putting Leslie Frazier there. Do you want to put like Jim Caldwell there or some shit?
So
David
I got
Shaw.
a couple more. I got a couple more names you might see pop up. Adam Stenovich, the offensive coordinator for Green Bay, has already been brought up. I would put him at tier 4. He's a great offensive. Yeah, he's a great offensive line coach.
Tier 4 guy, but I'm going to put him above Vance Joseph.
Yeah, he's a great offensive coach, offensive line coach. He's offensive coordinator name only. We've gone the Green Bay Packer route of hiring a Green Bay offensive coordinator who didn't call plays. So I do not think that is something that fans could be talked into. Aiden Dirty, I think that's how you say it, the Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator. He's become a bit of a hot name this cycle. Where would you put him?
I'll go to Kev.
Who was that? Give it one more time.
Aiden Dirty. Seahawks defensive coordinator.
Tier 4. I mean, I think Stenovich is higher than him. I think other guys are higher than him. I think he probably gets an interview. But again, if we're hiring a DC to be the head coach, I think there are names with far more experience.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, he was an intern for the Cowboys in 2015. So it has only been 10 years since he was an intern. This is his first year as a coordinator. Is the Seahawks defense really good? Yeah. But again, I
is
think
he calling the defense? No. Like,
correct. I think he's a guy that's in that not ready yet.
A couple other names that are popping up in the
Wasn't there a
coaching
name I missed in between Stenovich and Dirty? Or no?
No.
Okay.
Another name popping up, I would put this in not ready, is Davis Webb.
Yes.
The quarterback coach for Denver. He's getting interviews. People rave about him, but he's definitely not ready. And the not on the list, but I think we'll get an interview mainly just because of Rooney Rule and he's available. But I don't. Well, we can put him in tier 4. Would be Raheem Morris.
Tier 4 for Raheem Morris. I think he's a good coach. I think he can be a good head coach. Again, don't think we can go hire someone who just failed as a head coach.
I have a question. Last name I think that I'll throw out, even though I tend to lie. Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator and former young hot coaching candidate is Ejiro Evero.
Tier 3 for me.
Tier 3. I think he's done well with Carolina. I think his he just needs, I hate to say it this way, but he needs to get more momentum with his defense. He's done well, but it feels like he missed his chance. I do honestly think him turning down a chance to be the
that backfired
coach for Denver because he didn't want to hurt his chances. I think that actually hurt his chances. He's a good coach, but yeah,
there's one more popular name that's I feel like just has to be thrown out here because man, he's gonna be getting an interview somewhere. I think we all agree he's in one of two areas here. Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, tier 4, not on list. Where are we on?
I'm going closer to not on list than
not on list. I don't. His background just doesn't seem to mesh with the Green Bay style. Now, ironically, he did work under LaFleur in Tennessee, so there is that connection. I can't see it. It doesn't seem like a hire we would get behind, and that just feels like way too much. That feels like we would be prolonging a rebuild just because we would have to completely revamp the roster, like even more than we already have to. So I think this is our tiers. Now we got to be honest too. Signetti is not going to get an interview because he won't take one, but you definitely, I do agree with Jordan and Kev. You have to call him, or you should call him. But again, also want to be clear, any name on this list does not mean we don't want them, except not on the list. The further down, but even if you're looking at the tier 4, tier 3 guys and above, doesn't mean we're not going to support any of these coaches if they get hired. J.E. Sullivan has earned the right to succeed or fail with whoever he chooses as a coach, and the new coach will get the same opportunity. But this is just how we see it for the Dolphins.
I would prefer to have one of the 7 names minus Signetti, because I mean that's just there. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Signetti off, and I'm going to make it the Kurt Signetti tier 1.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair, and that's fine.
But I think that there are 7 guys between tier 1 and tier 2B, and I think that you really want to come out of this cycle with one of those guys.
I'm open to whoever, but I do think there's definitely levels. Like we have Salah in tier 3. I'd be open to him, but I wouldn't.
So in baseball, we have the Mendoza line. Okay. Yeah. The Mendoza line, you want to be hitting above average. Okay. At what is the McDaniel line? What's the McDaniel line where you put Mike McDaniel? that if we hire somebody below that line, you're like, oh, we might have downgraded a little bit?
I would just cut down the middle and say tier 3, because as exciting as Mike gave us, remember we were the only team to interview him to be a head coach. We got him a little too early, probably, but he really wasn't seen as a hot commodity at the time. So I would say if you look back then, he would have been considered a tier 3 candidate. Now, at the same time, Brian Daboll was a failure too, and he was considered a tier 1 candidate or like the slam dunk hire at the time. So we got to, like I said, we got to keep our options open. Nick
I still wanted what was the dude's name from Dallas that we all wanted?
Oh, Chris Richard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still want the alternate universe where we go the Chris Richard route.
Yeah, I mean, that was when it was Flores. It was either him or Flo.
Right.
Look,
can I say something completely insane? We can please everyone's ideas if we hire Anthony Campanile and he brings over Chris Richard as his defensive coordinator.
We do not interview Daboll for the head coaching job. No.
OC maybe, depending on
OC, sure, but not as head coach. The Giants was such a failure that he's got to rebuild his reputation.
Is there any other name that we have not named that you guys would like to add to this list?
Dan Marino, no.
Troy Aikman?
Troy Aikman, tier not on this tier head coach advisor.
Let's be clear, Mr. S. The only reason you want to interview is Brian Daboll is because of the success Tua had with him at Alabama. So let's be honest.
Well, wouldn't that be a funny spin?
I'm fine running it back as offensive coordinator, but I would not. I actually watched his Giant teams. I do not want him as the head coach. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of dysfunction, infighting with coaches and GMs. You can't bring him in as the head coach.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think, and we're an hour and 20 minutes into this, and this is more about the coaching search. So we're not going to get into the Tua conversation today or the Ewers or the draft conversation today, but it's going to be interesting to see based on who the coach is that comes in and based on the large number that is looming over Tua Tagovailoa's contract, if whoever the coach that comes in sees if there's a way to make that work.
It will be. And I will say this about the coaches to remind everybody, no matter how we have these tiers, a couple years ago, all the national media was making fun of Nick Sirianni and Dan Campbell, and look where they are now. So no matter who the hire is, you have to have an open mind. Hell, we thought hiring Adam Gase was a home run. He was the coach that cycle.
And now I still see screen passes in my nightmares because of him.
Well, that might also be because of Mike McDaniel, too.
They haunt me.
Yeah, can we just get a coach? You know what I want? I want a coach that runs the football.
Yeah. This isn't happening, so it's not worth discussing. Sorry.
A lot?
Yeah, it would take a first round. It's not happening. So it's not even.
It would take more than a first round. It would take a first rounder plus because they're not going to get rid of him. Though if he were to become available, he would be tier 1, figure it out later kind of thing. But I think just in general, right? Like I feel like we list 25, 30 names. Do we all agree that it's going to come from one of the top 10 names on this list, top 8 names on this list?
We actually had exactly 25 names. That's crazy. I'm hoping that it comes from the top 4. I'd be okay with the top 7, but I'm really hoping for one of the top 4.
I think at the end of the day, like, it's too easy to say Jeff Hafley, but I have a very funny feeling it's going to be, if we interview him, Anthony Campanelli.
His energy is infectious.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a matter of, do we interview him? You know what? Let's do this, guys. It is an hour and 25 minutes in, and I know we're about 5 minutes away from ending. Let's go around. Brett, who will be the next coach of the Miami Dolphins? You can give who you pick, and if it's not that guy, who you think it'll be.
I think it'll be Anthony Campanelli. Just
and if it's feeling. Not Anthony Campanelli.
If it's not Campanelli, Jeff Hafley.
Kevin?
I think it's John Harbaugh.
So do I. And if it's not John Harbaugh?
Campanile or Jesse Minter.
I say if it's not John Harbaugh, it's Chris Shula.
The thing I'll say on John Harbaugh here, and I get it, everyone's like, well, they didn't hire Chad Alexander, blah, blah, blah. First of all, if Harbaugh's only taking a job because it's Chad Alexander as his general manager, he's a bad head coach. Secondly, there's one GM spot open left. They're going to likely hire Ian Cunningham from the Bears because he's a guy who understands the Falcons system already.
And he played with Matt Ryan in college.
Yes. Third, and I guess arguably the most important thing about this is, I know we talked about this before the show started, never underestimate Stephen Ross when he wants to make a move. Because this is the same guy who flew out to try and interview Jim Harbaugh, same guy who actively courted Tom Brady when he was not in free agency, same guy who actively courted Sean Payton. This guy doesn't take no for an answer until you force him to take no for an answer.
As I've said for a week, and Brett has heard me say it till I'm blue in the face, if John Harbaugh is not the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, it will not be for a lack of trying from Stephen Ross. The reason that John Harbaugh will not be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins would be if he feels that one of the other jobs is better and that he has a better chance to win at one of those other jobs. If he thinks that he can do it here, he's going to be here.
Yeah, I think in general, look, I think the timing is still very interesting that they took them 5 days to fire Mike McDaniel. I don't think that's by chance. I don't think that's because they finally realized that they needed a new head coach. I think they got wind and indication that someone would at least be interested in that job that would make them do such a thing.
I agree. I just think it's going to come down to John Eric Sullivan's decision.
Maybe. I think that is certainly well within the realm of possibility where it's like Sullivan vetoes it because John Harbaugh, I think all the reports have come out that he wants to be like the highest paid coach in football. He wants full control, like a lot of stuff. First of all, I don't think he'll get that anywhere, but
if there's an owner that's going to give it to him, he's here.
I would make him the highest paid coach. I don't have a problem with that.
I'd give him $25 million. Andy Reid's the highest paid at 20, man. The money's not my issue.
Yeah.
I don't give a crap.
And I don't think the money is Stephen Ross's issue.
It does not count towards the salary cap, and it does not count towards my paycheck. So the truth of the matter is, man, however much money it takes to land him here, if it's going to be a money thing, let's go make it happen. I just feel like there is enough smoke that there will be genuine interest from both sides.
Yeah. I agree. I just kind of get the impression that we're going to go a different direction. But everybody, thank you for joining us for this near hour and a half session as we went over everything. Again, interviews are starting. We are interviewing Kubiak today. I don't know if anybody else is interviewing today. We have requested interviews with Robert Saleh and Chris Shula, and we are expected to talk to John Harbaugh and Kevin Stefanski. That is what's out there. And the search, just to give everybody an idea, will be the same committee that ran the GM search, but also include John Eric Sullivan. I guess the last question I have before we get off, do you guys think this will lead to Troy Aikman getting a job with the Dolphins?
A formal job, no. But I think that there's
president of football ops, something like that.
I think, will he still be able to do Monday Night Football?
Tom Brady's an owner and can still do.
Right, but Tom Brady's an owner and doing some loose stuff. I feel like a president of football operations has a little bit more. I could see him in like a Dan Marino senior consultant, whatever type role, but I can't see him having an official front office title.
I think they're effectively giving him a chance if he wants to be a full-time consultant, help with, hires and stuff like that. He's more than willing to go do it. Like there'll be a spot for him. It's up to him if he wants it. That's just kind of the general sense I get, is that like, if he wants a role, he can have a role, but he's got to tell them that he wants the role.
All right. Well, another busy week coming up for the Dolphins. If things keep going how they have been, we are probably going to have a head coach by Tuesday. I don't think we will, but we're moving fast this offseason. Thank you for joining us again. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. It does help us out. And we will be back probably later this week with more content. So enjoy your Saturday, everybody.
Thank you for following.
See ya.